A little bit about me quickly. I'm in the product development, product strategy group for Verizon, so that's a worldwide group, and we deliver our products to all lines of business, but predominantly in international, that's B2B, that's large enterprise. And so that's what I'm going to talk about. The theme of today is in the real world. So Verizon have the lucky pleasure of being quite out in front, really, with deployment of service chains, VNF, orchestration, whiteboxes, etc. So we have a lot of live customers today, and we've really moved ahead in the last couple of years. So we've seen definitely some of the real world issues, and that's what I want to try and focus on today, the tricky stuff a little bit, with actually getting this working. So the general background that most people know is that enterprises, large enterprises, are under extreme pressure, and I like rewriting this list every now and again because it changes. You could list it yourself: the fourth industrial revolution, digital transformation, mergers and acquisitions, millennials and social media with new business models, cybersecurity problems, fintech, startup communities, all challenging normal business models. And then I like to add in climate change, trade wars, and Brexit as well, as potential other disruptors in the business environment. The rise of the cloud, 5G, I mean, the list goes on. It doesn't even get into AI, robotics, and other technologies. But what is it all equal? Enormous pressure for our businesses today, many businesses, to transform. And that all equals more pressure on IT. And I mean IT in the wider sense, networking, IT globally. Without that pressure, we would probably all move at a familiar, let's say, slowish pace that we have done for many years. What has Verizon done then? We took this decision, at least back in 2015, to really go for it, we could say. Rather than being also-ran and just plod along doing a bit of SD-WAN, a bit of this, a bit of virtualization, we decided to build an entire ecosystem and go for the full promise of a full open ecosystem, cloudified product range or portfolio. This is called Virtual Network Services. And the theme of today will be to talk about the realities of going for the grand promise and the full orchestration and all of this. But actually, when the rubber hits the road and we have to implement this, what do we actually face? That's what I'll talk about. Let me get the clicker. So how are we responding? The slide after this is the master slide I'll show you, which I've shown a few times. But these are just some areas that I like to kind of call it MVP 2 now. Probably 2 years ago we were MVP 1, which, if I'm honest about, I hear a lot in the industry really is trying to get to, in a sense, MVP 1 with a lot of these areas. We've been doing SD-WAN. We've got lots of SD-WAN customers out there. We've been doing that since 2015, and we do it virtualized now in various forms. We're looking to put SD-WAN on steroids soon. We're looking at user transactions, user profiles and transaction profiles to guide our bandwidth, our SD-WAN choices, rather than just application-aware routing, which is one of its primary features. We've got 23 service chains, so I think we're one of the only companies in the world that can actually do many service chains now. Pretty much everything starts with SD-WAN, we found with our customers, SD-WAN Plus, and that could be Internet Breakout, that could be Cloud Connect over MPLS, that could be various firewalls, and the list goes on. We have lots of domains of software we've onboarded, but the reality of deploying it is getting the service chain or specific use case right. You have to be very prescriptive when we're actually selling and delivering. We've just onboarded an SD wireless WAN vendor, so Mist, which is an AI-based wireless technology. We do a lot of application management, working with App Dynamics and lots of different tooling, Sev1 in particular, not just to have a range of products to measure, which is where we all start, I think, but also to have that feedback loop back into the underlay and how we control this. I'm going to talk more about orchestration and closed loop, which we have a global platform with our partners at Ericsson. We've just launched our zero-touch provisioning engine, so you can ship a box, turns on, finds home. Sounds easy, it's incredibly hard depending on where you are, and self-provisions from the orchestrator. UCPE, so we have a range of UCPE. I would argue personally the only white boxes in the market. They're all standards-based. They have no proprietary chipsets or no proprietary standards on them. There's a MEF switch in there, there's Docker, there's OpenStack, you know, we have to put the software on there and harden it and make it secure. But other than that, everything about the box is, open standards based. And we're about to, you know, make more announcements in that area. We don't stand still. We're going to have another range. And we have our cloud, our network cloud. So if you're deploying OpenStack at the edge on the Whiteboxes, that's great. But there's lots of use cases where people want to put it into an aggregate still in a data center. Not their own, if they're looking to, you know, save money and reduce their own real estate. They can deploy it in our OpenStack data centers around the world. So, you know, we're creating that telco cloud, or MIST as it sometimes gets called. That's our master slide for VNS. Just very quickly then, down the bottom we have our deployment models. Probably bottom left is 2015 where we started with managed SD-WAN. That's our bread and butter. Managed WAN, managed SD-WAN's the next thing. That's appliance based. But we soon realized we wanted to go on this virtualization journey. So then we started Universal CPE. We actually started with grey box, but that didn't really sell. People didn't want to buy routers inside, servers inside expensive routers. I'm sure that you know, the standard vendors' grey boxes will go white over time, although, you know, it's debatable how white they really want to make their boxes in terms of having multiple vendors that you can provision and manage on there. We've got our white boxes, and we're developing that. And then we've got our data centers, and then, of course, we spin things up in the cloud. You know, there's a journey here, really from the edge going back to the hyperscale cloud providers, or from the hyperscale cloud providers coming to the edge, depending on how far they'll come. On the yellow, you'll see the software that we've onboarded so far in domains. Onboarding means we've taken the binary, we've tested it in OpenStack, we've tested that it can work on these boxes, we've tested that the license file doesn't muck up, we've, you know, all the basics of compliance, and that we can manage it, we can take snapshots, etc. And then importantly, at the top, that's really what we deliver to our customers, service chains. So very popular. We've got Cisco. That's often Viptela, as we know now. You know, with a firewall, but sometimes it's Versa, and that's maybe an appliance-based. Service chaining isn't needed in every instance on every site. It depends on what the customer wants. So a whole range there. Orchestration use cases, I'll quickly touch on what we've been doing. So zero touch, I'll talk more about that in a minute. That's very important. That's sometimes what people think of as orchestration. It's the rapid deployment, rapid provisioning. But we've also done closed loop. So I think we're probably one of the only players out there who's doing closed loop. So we can self-heal the VNF in the data center or on the white box if we see alarm thresholds being reached. We take a snapshot when we provision the VNFs, and we reinstantiate that VNF. And it's early days there. You know, it's self-healing really at the moment. That's just, you know, what the data centers do. But over time, we're going to be moving those VNFs, we're going to be resizing them, and then you're going to be able to start tuning your network. Does the customer, or do we want to have extra resources available to move VNFs around for, you know, for upgrades, for resiliency, just to be always on maybe. You know, there's a lot more that can be done then. And self-defending, you know, in alarm conditions that are, you know, maybe security profiles are raised or things are happening somewhere, whatever that may be, you can then, you can start to do things with the VMs and start to tune your network. Cross-carrier automation. So a lot of what we talk about, and you hear here, of course, is north-south, really. But east-west is important. So I'll show a slide on what we did with Colt recently. We did that dynamic bandwidth API. So where we changed the bandwidth in our network, it automatically propagated in theirs and vice versa. And then lastly, we have a portal and we have an API strategy. APIs are relatively easy to write or inherit with the software. What's important is the management and the policy around the API. So exposing APIs, co-management of software is obviously a tricky business. We predominantly do managed services at the moment, but we obviously open APIs up and allow our customers to manage the bits that are safe to do so. So our white box, I'll just quickly mention the evolution. As I said, we went to grey box to start with, then we released our own white boxes. We will release another, make some announcements about more performance there, better memory utilization, faster speeds, maybe better packet processing. You need fast packet processing there. We want more density in the boxes, really. But also, at some point, you know, we're not really a CPE vendor, or we don't, plan that to be our business strategy. So we will do bring your own hardware once, there's the ability to load our software on, another box and know that we'll get the performance. It doesn't bother us if somebody has the hardware that will do this at the moment. And bring your own software. So we're even looking at models where a percentage of the Whitebox we carve out, and the customer can do what they like with that. So there's lots of models with Whitebox that are emerging. This is the cross-carrier piece I mentioned, so all under the auspices of the MEF, the LSO project. So we spun up 2 live Ethernet circuits between us and them, ran some video over it, degraded the video, kicked off in our portal a 10 to 50 meg upgrade on the bandwidth. Within 10 minutes, approximately, it propagated to theirs and the video restored. And then we did it vice versa on the other live link, and it was about the same time. So it works. What we're doing now is productizing it. Again, in the real world, that bit actually took a little while just getting things set up. The API wasn't particularly hard, but you've got to get the circuit set up and all of this. What we need to do now is the billing, the ordering, make sure that the offers work in all countries, all of the other stuff to make it an actual product for a customer or an offering. Zero-touch provisioning. So this has been an interesting journey. I mean, the key thing with zero-touch, or some people say they don't like the word zero-touch because somebody has to touch the box, and yes, that's true unless we can get Amazon delivering it by drone and installing it, I suppose. But we're all robots and nobody touches anything. But we have to ship the box. So what are we doing now in the new model? We're shipping it with the software, the hypervisor layer. So you don't need to do that bootstrap yourself. It will bootstrap when it's powered on. Of course, it still needs to be placed on a shelf, or in some cases still rack mounted. But then it's going to find home. So it's automatically got software, in our case, Adver, write our software layer. It's going to find home by whatever means it can. It's got the IP address. This is where you need to take into consideration what access product did you deliver that over? Does that have DHCP? Is there some NATing needed? Do you need to embed some static IPs on the box? The list of things goes on. It then needs to tunnel back to your management platform, which has different domains. Now in the lab, it's in the right domain. Outside, you've got to open up firewalls and allow that box to come back and authenticate with your management domain. So we build up that two-way trust mechanism, that communication. It then needs to build a separate tunnel into our provisioning engine, which then can start actually building, that's our orchestrator. It then starts building the VNFs, and then leaves it in a management state. And again, there's things to think about in management. Downloading patches depends what size they are. It might work well in a lab, but if that's on a low-speed broadband in, Azerbaijan, not that I know about low-speed broadband in Azerbaijan, but you could have problems there. Sometimes in management, if it's not broken, don't try and fix it. So we, the first attempt at this, we've done it over third-party broadband because broadband's very popular with our customers at the moment. Understandably, they're looking to get away, ideally, from that Hobson's choice between expensive and reliable bandwidth and cheap and I'm not sure, but probably it's good enough. By the way, on the underlay layer, this is all about the overlay, we are also looking at how we can do more ubiquitous products, SLA-based network connections. We'll take care of the technology, we'll take care of the backbone, we'll take care of the SLA, because we've got quite a big global reach and we have a lot of partners we work with, so it's really all about peering. So we want to move away from having that choice even in the underlay and offering more of an SLA-based network. Moving on to network as software. So I drew this slide up a while ago, and I thought about VNFs being, a software pipeline. A lot of people talk about DevOps. DevOps in cloud native world, in the IT data center world, is all very Kubernetes and very, in quotes, free and easy. As we say, the cloud is great, but it doesn't have to take care of the network. They just assume network's always available. But VNFs are big and clunky, and we need to get them cloudified and virtualized, and we need them to have standard interfaces, and we'd like them to have more standard simplistic billing mechanisms, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on of things we'd like to do with VNFs. But they are pieces of software. We are onboarding them. So if we think about the journey, the binary comes from the vendor, who in theory has done their own, of course, their own DevOps and their own testing. But it comes into Verizon, and we thought, well, we're going to need to revision control all of this. We're going to need to extend that pipeline from the vendors into our network as code. So we created a VNF marketplace. This is a portal where vendors and partners, if they're customers who write code, automatically can onboard and control what they've onboarded and sent to us. They can then automate their testing. They can start to use our test resources, our automated ones, pen testing, performance testing, functional testing, compliance testing to OpenStack and these such things. So we begin the kind of the journey as to what's available, what state it's in, what revision, all of the drivers that go with it. Once we're happy with it, we can then release it in a sense to our sales communities and our customers to begin designing, and then we have design tools so they can start to build the virtual picture of what they want and where they want it. Do they want it available always on? Will they have virtual capacity left at multiple data centers, multiple boxes? That virtual design is a little bit different to the usual statement of works and just list of BOM, bill of materials that we create. You need to virtually design how it's going to work and then create the list of materials. So we do that, and then rapid provisioning, that's what I described as zero touch. You've got to get it automatically into that engine and deploy the boxes, and that's getting the software instantiated. It's then in service. We have our policy portal. Now if you like, it's the DevOps model. It's now being deployed, not just from the vendor, but now into the customer's network. He can track this in his DevOps stack now by looking at the dashboards. Where is it? Is it deployed? Is it performing? How many errors did I? What are my metrics during the test life cycle? But now it's in service. It can look at and maybe make some changes through our VEC portal and our APIs. Maybe I'd like to, depending on the managed service agreement, maybe I'd like to change the policy, maybe I'd like to change the routing, whatever it may be. And then lastly, the self-healing. I mentioned that it will self-heal. So again, snapshots are taken. You get metrics coming out on how often did I have to self-heal or resize the VMs or move them. All of this, the life cycle of the software. And of course, ultimately, that would be a feedback loop, coming back into the lab. What do I want to do next? Do I need to patch it? Do I need to change vendors? That can take a while. But do I need to do something else with the software? This is the last slide, pretty much. Call to action. It's not just about new technology. Of course, we're all here predominantly to talk about technology. The call to action is really, as we all know, is to think about the real world and how we're doing this. Think about the underlying licensing. Think about the networks that you're deploying on. Think about the underlay. We like to say at Verizon, we talk about the overlay, but everything the overlay can't do, you've got to take care of in the underlay. And in fact, everything the overlay can do, you normally still need to take care of in the underlay. Routing domains, you name it. So think about, not just the overlay, but the underlay. Think about all of the different access technologies you're going to deploy this over. And think ultimately then about what that's going to give to the customer, of course. Normally they're looking for SD-WAN, we've noticed. They're looking for speed of deployment, and they're looking for simplification, that cloud experience. Then, physical VNFs don't equal virtual VNFs. I've spoken about that just a moment ago. We do find that that we still need to provision, and our orchestrator that we have is a service orchestrator end-to-end, so you've got to still provision into the real world. All the links between our assurance and orchestrator world is connected to all of our physical platforms, east-west, so that both sides know what they're doing. But we do call on the vendors to build trust with us. There has to be something in it for them, of course, as well as us. We do need to create a trust environment here where they can open up their software, they can open up and become more agile. Not just because big operators like us say so, but because our customers need it. If we don't get the agility into it, it's the Brexit and all of those other things that are going to they're going to cripple businesses, and we're not going to respond within IT. And lastly, of course, we talk about the millennial approach. New guys coming into our companies and our customers' companies expect to be writing code or just using services, like that. They don't really expect to be going on massive training programs for 4 weeks and then going into big projects that take 2 years to deliver. They want to be able to come in and either use the services instantly wherever they may be, or they want to get on with coding and releasing things quickly. So keep that in mind as well. And with that, I'll thank you very much and hand back. Thank you.
Thank you very much.